Well, it's a fourth straight loss for your Pittsburgh Penguins. They lose 4-3 in overtime to pick up a point. All-Star break, I think, could not come at a better time for this team. I have a full game recap coming up for you all right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Tuesday evening episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So the Penguins, they fall 4-3 tonight to the Washington Capitals. That is their fourth straight loss. I know I said on Sunday I was pretty frustrated after the Kings game because, I thought the Penguins could have gotten at least a point out of that. The Penguins definitely, I think, deserve 2 points tonight. I'll start right there. They thoroughly dominated the Capitals all game long. It's a shame that they lost that game. They outshot them 25-5 in in the second period. They had 62% of the shot attempts at 5v5. They had 62% of the scoring chances at 5v5. 2.29 expected goals for, or 61.4% of the expected goals. If we go to all situations, 60% of the shot attempts for the Penguins, 60% of the scoring chances, 61% of the high danger chances, 59% of the expected goals for at all situations, and 40% for Washington. I've said it so many times, both on this pod and on my social media, for those that are not on there. This is the devil's sport because stuff like this happens on a nightly basis. You will always see teams that beat other teams that don't deserve it. And tonight you saw, the Penguins were outskating the Capitals virtually that entire contest. But the reason why they lost, well, poor defensive play. Tristan Jarry, again, had a little bit of an off night. It's not the same, but you know what? He has a week off. He'll be fine. And they weren't finishing their chances at 5v5. Ilya Samsonov was really good at the other end. Those are the main reasons, I think, why they lost this game. And it's a bad loss any way you cut it. You got to find a way to get 2 points out of this. I know it stings that they've lost 4 in a row, but they also out of 8 points they've gotten 3 out of 8. So they're still gaining points along the way. Remember, they're still 3 points up on the Capitals right now, 2 points behind the Rangers going into the All-Star break, and the Penguins' next game will be in Boston right after that. So that's going to be one heck of a welcome, to say the least. The Bruins are playing really well this year. And the Penguins have also not won in Boston in 8 or 9 years. So that should be fun. We'll get to that game a lot later on in the week and probably next week. But, for this one, another thing I have to say it. I don't really know why Mike Sullivan decided to ice Kasperi Kapanen in the overtime. This is a player right now. If he's not on your nerves, I don't know what people are watching, to say the least. He is just definitely grinding my gears and a whole lot of people on social media. I think he cost them the game in that overtime. I know Sidney Crosby is to blame a little bit. He didn't play that Orlov goal the best. It happens to him, whatever. But what Kapanen did was pretty much a joke. So for everyone that watched or that did not watch, if you're tuning in and didn't watch, I'm going to break this down for you. Penguins have the puck, 1:30 left in overtime. Kapanen has the puck at the top of the point, no pressure by him, none at all. There's no one's coming towards him. For some reason, instead of retreating and taking the puck back, resetting like the Penguins have been doing a lot in 3-on-3 this season, even though they've struggled quite a bit for some reason, I don't know why. He decides to fire it. It goes off a Capital, and then they're back the other way. They score 45 seconds later because they've had all that zone time, and the Penguins don't touch the puck again after that. And it's just like, why are you firing the puck when there was no pressure around you? I mean, I think that reeks of a player that does not have any confidence right now. And I understand that he's been flip-flopped a lot with lines. He only played 8 minutes last game because Mike Sullivan's getting a little pissed off. But, I mean, it still speaks volumes that he can't even do the simple plays right now. Forget scoring. I mean, sure, he puts up some goals here and there, but he can't even make like the little plays right. And it's just it boggles my mind at this point for how bad he's playing. I, I'm going to say this right now as well. I don't think he can be on the team past this summer. I mean, I'd potentially entertain trading him at the deadline if they can get some immediate help. I'm not really sure how that's going to go over with Ron Hextall and see if other GMs would want him. But I think if you were to trade him at this point, you would not see a lot of fans upset about it. And, last season, you had some people in the fan base saying, I would beware with him because he had a very high shooting percentage, and that was the reason why he was so good. Remember, 10, what was it? 10, 12 goals, 30 points in 40 games, almost point per game production, but his underlying numbers were pretty bad. This season, it's flipped a little bit. His underlying numbers are pretty decent, but he's not putting the puck in the net and has lost all of his confidence. And this is the kind of player that you get. I mean, it's just, every time, again tonight, I noticed multiple times that he comes into the zone with so much speed, stops on a dime, and then gives the puck away or tries to force a pass. And it's just like, buddy, use your speed to your advantage there and make the right and simple play. He just has not been doing that all season, and it's costing the team like it did tonight against Washington. So, I don't really know what else to say. I think at this point, I've really just nailed it down with that. I'm not really going to blame Tristan for that goal. That's just a hell of a shot from Dmitry Orlov. Kudos to him. Put it in the only place where he could beat Tristan, and the Capitals go home with the extra point. But the game looked like it was going to a shootout there. If Kapanen hadn't done that, who knows what happens. So I think that's that on that. Sid had a glorious opportunity just a couple minutes before, had a little mini breakaway, actually did a little bit of a deke, forehand, backhand, just missed Samsonov. He tried to tuck it in right past his pad, goes off the pipe a little bit, but also it had a nice, beautiful toe save there by Samsonov. He was just on one tonight with how spectacular save after spectacular save. It was ridiculous with how he was playing. I think, he more than anyone willed Washington to that win. Again, overall, I really liked this team's performance. This was probably their best forecheck, and I would say a week. I even noted to myself, and on social media when I was watching the game, the Penguins were passing, Jesse Marshall's forecheck vibe. You watch the opening 5 minutes, you usually know how the game is going to go, excuse me, with how the team is playing after the first 5 minutes. This one, it was probably in that, 1 to 5% range that they lost, but they were forechecking with authority, and that kept up all game long. So it's unfortunate to say the least, but again, at the end of the day, they got a point. And I also have to say this as well. I think the All-Star break has come at a perfect time for this team. Sure, they're 0-1-3 in their last 4 games. I get it. It's not good. No one likes to be on a losing streak. This is the first time they've lost 4 in a row in a couple of months. They've been one of the best teams in hockey. I understand. But with how much hockey they have played during that time, most of these guys need a week off, and I'm sure they're going to say that to the media during the post-game press conferences. So, while I understand that losing is not fun, I see a little bit of a silver lining with they've gotten a few points. They're still top 3 in the Metro. They have a 16-point cushion on the Detroit Red Wings right now for that. 16-point cushion from being outside of the playoff picture, I should say, and that's a lot to make up in. They have to play 37 games, I think is what they have left. So they're fine. I'm not going to really go deeper than that. They need the break. They'll be rested up, and then they'll be ready to go against Boston next week, to say the least. So that wraps up this first segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up in the next one, we're going to go into how the power play has just been scorching hot lately. We're going to do a deep dive on Bryan Rust and why they might actually have to keep him at this point, even though it's going to be really hard for the Penguins. I'll give you my thoughts on that. Also going to go into that weird goaltender interference call and a whole bunch of other stuff to come out of this game, including, the officiating, I think, as a whole. But first, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pros and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, etc., etc. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. I don't really know what else to say about the power play at this point. Here is a stat for you all, though. I saw this during the broadcast, and now it's updated. The Penguins, since January 1st, they are tied for the league lead, with 16 power play goals with the Colorado Avalanche. That is just how good it has been since Evgeny Malkin came back. And is that a coincidence? No, it is not. He's one of the best players in hockey. The puck movement tonight and just throughout that span has been magnificent. I mean, the one they scored tonight after Tom Wilson's stupidity there by hitting Malkin resulted in that goal was just hilarious. But the puck movement on there took the cake. Sid had that amazing pass to Rust. Gino was threading some, beautiful saucer passes. Letang was moving it really crisply outside of the shorthanded, goal that they gave up. I'll get to that in just a sec. But I mean, this is probably some of the best movement we have seen on the power play in quite a while. Their struggles from the early going, they are not there anymore. And, the Penguins, they're making teams pay on the man advantage night in and night out. I mean, basically almost all of their goals tonight were scored on the man advantage. I mean, that's the crazy thing about it. Their 5-on-5 struggles have definitely been well documented, though I would also chalk that up to them just getting more unlucky because their shooting percentage has kind of cratered. They're getting the chances at 5v5. They're just not putting them in the back of the net. And, that's the ebbs and flows of an 82-game season. I am sure it is going to regress as the season goes on. Anyways, back to my PowerPoint discussion. This unit is becoming, I think, a big problem for the rest of the league. With the talent that they can put out there, they're not trying to be like the Harlem Globetrotters, by making all of these, amazing plays. They're sticking to the basics. They're passing the puck well. They're getting to the high danger areas, and they're converting in those areas. The Capitals had no chance on their PK tonight, and the Penguins were just magnificent in that regard. Bryan Rust, he had 2 goals. Thought he was going to have the HT numerous times, but Samsonov was a brick wall. And then Evgeny Malkin, he was able to notch his 5th goal of the night. Just a really nice pass, I thought, there from Gensel to Gino, who put it short side past Vitek Vanacek before he got hurt. And I'll get to that in just a second as well. But I'm loving what the power play is doing right now. They're not having any problems as well with the zone entries. That was, I think, a big problem during the early portions of the season. They were doing that drop pass, which wasn't really working. And, sure, they still do it now, but they've been able to gain the zone just much more, I guess, convincingly is the word that I'm looking for. And they've been able to set up shop right when they get in, and they're not just dumping the puck in and praying that they're going to get there before one of the other opposition skaters get there and then just clear the puck. They're actually getting in, setting up, getting to the areas where they are aligned at, and then they're just moving the puck around flawlessly, shooting the puck a lot more than they were early on in the season, getting to those high danger areas, and then they're just finishing it. So I'm loving what the man advantage is doing right now. Other areas tonight, the goaltending interference call was probably the weirdest goaltender interference call I've ever seen. Jed of Penguins Twitter, Jedediah, shout out to him if you don't follow him on Penguins Twitter. He sent me this article from Down Goes Brown from The Athletic, basically explaining what goaltender interference and just like a deep dive into, why the calls are made with these certain ones. I read through that article from him, and I still have no idea how that one was called back. I really don't think Nick Dowd did anything there. I mean, sure, maybe he made a little bit of contact, but I don't think it really, it didn't allow Jari to play his position. I still think he did. It was just a really weird call. I think in general, if that happened to the Penguins, surely you all know I would be livid about that, and I'm sure the entire fan base will be livid about that as well. So that was weird. I thought the officiating all night was kind of crappy, to be honest. They were just missing calls left and right. There was one where Crosby got mowed down in front of the net, no call. I think it was Brian Dumont on Carl Hagelin. He gives him a massive whack, and then he hooks him. There's no call there. Jake Ensel is being called for some really soft penalties. The same as being, with Washington, with Garnett Hathaway and all that. It was just a really weird game for the officials. I just don't think they knew what they were doing. They were kind of just, making calls for the sake of making calls. And I'm not a fan of that kind of officiating. They were just, if one team got penalized for something small, they were always looking to even it up with something even smaller. And it's just like, okay, if we're going to call penalties, let's call it right. I mean, I don't need to see guys going to the box for barely even doing anything. And thank goodness I was not listening to the Washington feed, because apparently they were harping on that, goaltender interference on call for basically the last 30 minutes of the broadcast. Look, I get it. Goaltending interference, no one knows what it is in NHL. The fact of the matter is, this happens on a weekly basis at this point. A team gets screwed by a goaltender interference call. Actually, I mean, it even happened with the Rangers a few days ago, where it looked like they scored a goal, but I believe it was Ryan Strome that pushed Cam Talbot's pad with about a couple seconds remaining, and they said no goal because that was goaltender interference. Rangers fans were acting like they all just got sent to the gulag or something like that. I mean, they were just mad online about it when that was clear goaltender interference. But I get it. These kind of calls happen. It stinks what it does, but you know what? It's over with. Get over it. You won the game. Even if they lost, I'm sure they would still be talking about it as well. What are you going to do? You're going to harp on the officiating for until the end of time? I just don't see where that's good for anyone, at least. But, again, I will say definitely not good officiating in this game from both sides tonight. The penalty kill, I definitely think that unit tonight was not at its best. The one where they scored the power play goal, and the Capitals have not had a good power play this year, despite, they have a lot of talent. But they were playing way too passive, I saw. I don't know if other people noticed that on the goal that Dmitry Orlov scored, when he rushed in, that was only about a couple seconds remaining on the power play. But before that, about 20 to 25 seconds before, the Penguins were playing so far back in front of the net. And it was just like, wait, this is not a 5-on-3. Put some more pressure up there. I think Brian Boyle, because he's usually in that wedge +1 spot, right, where he's causing all that havoc, and then the other three Penguin skaters are kind of making a triangle in front of Tristan Jarry to make sure that the other players, don't get to those high danger areas, and they force, the Capitals or whatever team to take shots from medium to low danger areas. But the Capitals were getting a lot of really grade A looks on that man advantage. And honestly, the second one as well, where it was like, I don't know what's going on here. It was almost like it was looking like last year's PK unit. And they were lucky that the Capitals did not score 2 power play goals tonight, to say the least. Just did not like that at all. They were also missing quite a bit of clears. John Marino, again, just, actually, I'm going to save some John Marino talk for the third segment, because at this point, it's getting old and tiring. But, I thought the team overall was just a little lazy getting to loose pucks on the man disadvantage. So they'll have that to clean up, I think, a little bit going into and then coming out of the All-Star break. But that'll wrap up the second segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast for Tuesday. Coming up in the last segment, we're going to go into John Marino and just, what's been going on there with more struggles. And of course, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion on Bryan Rust as well. But before we do that, you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why should you choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer. You can go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solutions to your auto part needs. Remember, go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And you can write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, right below prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter, LO_Penguins. So, John Marino, again, just really not good in front of the net again. And I mean, this is a problem that's continuing to get worse. I also think that the All-Star break will do a lot of good for him, because this is probably the worst I've seen John Marino play for as long as he's been in NHL. And I know that's not long; it's only a few seasons. But you can't get any lower at this point. On the Orlov goal, he's not playing his man there at all. I know, the Capitals got that first chance, but, Marino is not even trying to stop him from coming in and getting on the rebound. He's just sitting there, and it's like, buddy, you gotta play better defense there. In the offensive zone, he has a grade A chance, it looks like, has the puck on his stick, flat out fans on it. It's just like, man, I mean, I know you're probably trying your best out there. I respect that, but it's just it's not happening for you right now, man. And it's really upsetting because Marcus Pettersson, his partner, has been really freaking good this year, and Marino is not taking advantage of that. I know he usually plays his best hockey next to Pettersson, and that was true last year when the underlying numbers supported that. But this year, it's been anything but a good season for Marino on both ends of the rink. I hate when he comes into the zone and kind of just stops and flings it wherever, and then it's just basically a turnover. We need to see more out of him at this point. I don't know if that means deploying him better, putting him in a better. I don't know. I don't know how you're going to put him in a better position to see, more defensive zone draws. I don't know at this point, but the coaching staff needs to figure it out and figure it out quick because he signed for what, another 5 more years at almost $4.5 million per. That contract could look dicey pretty freaking soon. So I definitely want him to be figured out there. Bryan Rust, I mean, another 2 goals tonight. This is ridiculous what we have been seeing from him this season, well over a point per game. At this point, I think the Penguins are going to have to figure out a way to keep him. But, what I've been saying is, how are you going to accomplish that? I understand Kasperi Kapanen is probably not going to be back next season. At least, in my opinion, he should not be. That's some money right there. You already signed Jeff Carter. What's going to happen with Evan Rodriguez? Do you let him walk? You see where I'm going now? What about Jason Zucker? That's $5.5 million on your cap. Are you going to find a taker that will eat at least half of his salary? That might be easier said than done because, some teams may look at him and, they may see the talent, but they could say, oh, is he not going to produce like he hasn't in Pittsburgh this season or, in portions of last season where the puck was just not going in the net? I think it would probably be a little bit easier to trade him, in comparison to like someone like Jack Johnson because, his value I think was even lower than Jason's. But I do think some teams are going to be scared just, because of the contract situation. And rightfully so. He makes $5.5 million for another year. He's been in and out of the lineup this year. Last year he wasn't scoring a lot. That trade is definitely looking like a bust when at the time, it was looking pretty good just because with how, with how great he was playing in Minnesota. That's probably where you get your cap room. If you can have another team, take most of Zucker's contract, you get Kapanen off the books, and then whatever happens with Rodriguez happens, you probably will be able to sign Rust for, it's tough. I was probably going to say probably, but will he sign 5 times 6? I don't know. I think at this point it might have to be 5 times 7. And are the Penguins comfortable giving him that kind of term and that AAV? And to the fans that are listening to this podcast, are you comfortable by giving a 30-year-old player who plays a very physical game, and I know produces very much, but he's on the wrong side of 30 at this point, are you comfortable giving him, almost Chris Letang money at this point with what Letang is making right now? That's my biggest question. And, it's going to be a very challenging situation, I think, for Ron Hextall because I don't know what you do here. I mean, obviously, I think, Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin take precedence, and rightfully so. They're 2 of the best players to ever play for your franchise. But Bryan Rust, with how great that he has been ever since coming up from Wilkes-Barre, 6 years ago, I think he definitely needs to be kept. It's just, can the Penguins make it work money-wise? I'm still a bit skeptical myself. That said, I would love for him to stay. I think they hopefully can figure out a way to do it. It's a matter of, how creative Ron Hextall and Brian Burke will get in that department. So those are my thoughts with the Bryan Rust situation. I will say Chris Letang-wise before I end the show here. I've been noticing this a little bit more throughout the last week or two. He needs to stop with these dumb cross-ice passes when an opposing penalty killer is right at the blue line. They're going to intercept that every time, and that's exactly what Nick Dow did. He gets a breakaway, scores on Tristan Jarry. That's not a pass you can make there. You got to either dump it in, or just keep the puck. or attempt to make a move, dump it in. You can't go cross ice that guy. I know he's a very high risk player. That's who he always has been. He's going to make a lot of money on his next contract, whether it's here, hopefully, or for another team. But those errors definitely do add up. I'm sure Penguins Chronicles on social media is going to chronicle that because for some reason he has a vendetta against Crystal Tang. But otherwise, I thought he played a pretty flawless game. And overall, just the Penguins got unlucky tonight. That's how she blows. It's an 82 game season. There's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows. Yes, this team is going to win games moving forward. They're not going to go on. I don't think knock on wood. I'll knock on wood to make sure hopefully this does not happen. God forbid they would go on a 13 game losing streak like the Philadelphia Flyers or something like that. But they're able to get 3 out of 8 points. That's still big. They're keeping pace with some of the other teams. It's just a matter of getting back into the win column and being consistent because I really thought the team played a very sound game tonight. It was just that, the mistakes that they made, like the Kings game, ended up in the back of their net, and they also were not finishing their chances. And, the other goaltender, Ilya Samsonov, stood on his head. But that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I have a couple of big surprises for, later this week. Well, at least one big one. I have a special guest joining the show on Thursday. Despite no more games this week, the grind does not stop. We had 15,000 downloads last month in January. That's the most all time for this show. Can't thank all of you enough for continually downloading this podcast and listening to me blabber about this team for 25 to 30 minutes every weekday. It warms my heart that everyone it warms my heart that a good chunk of people just love hearing what I have to say. And you, the listeners, I'm talking to you all right now, you are the reason why I continually do this each and every day. So thank you all so much for listening to this one. I'll be back on Wednesday with another episode for the show. I'll talk to you all then.